In today's Affinity Learning Series video, I'm going to get you up to speed on Affinity's Layout Studio, which is what was Affinity Publisher. I'm going to show you how this is a super useful tool for creating multi-page documents, advanced layouts, publications for print, but potentially even more because of some of the advanced features like master pages, text flow, text wrap. I think this is going to be super useful for a lot of users, but especially if you're someone coming from Canva, because Canva is great at a lot of things, but it's not great at long form documents and advanced page layout design. It is filled with time traps waiting to gobble up your time for those sorts of things. And I'm going to show you what those traps are and how you can now avoid them with Affinity. So if you want a smarter workflow, if you want to save tons of time, then this is the video for you. Let's jump right in and learn Affinity's Layout Studio. One of the strengths of Canva is it has lots and lots of ready-to-go templates, but there are also some traps in here. So if I search for magazine templates, I get all these templates, but what if I click on this one right here? Let's look at how the text is wrapping around this picture. But is it really though? I'm going to start by showing you some traps and then showing you how you can easily avoid those in something like Affinity's Layout Studio, because there are things that Canva just isn't good at. So regardless of whether you're a Canva user or not, these are traps that potentially you can fall into if you're not using the right tool for advanced print layout design and things like text wrap around images like this. And I will also include chapter timestamps and put them in the video description down below if you want to jump to a particular section of this video and learn about a particular feature. So let me go ahead and hit customize this template. We're going to open this and I'm just going to show you the time trap that exists here. So we have text here and we have text here, and seemingly it flows around this picture. But is that really what's happening? If you're starting with this template, obviously you're going to come in here and put in your own text, your own content. So let's go in here and let me just copy this. And what happens if I paste it into this text box here where apparently it's wrapping around this, but is it? If I hit Control V, we see it's not actually wrapping around that. The reason why they got this here is just by putting in extra spaces. So if I wanted this to wrap around here, am I really going to come in here and say, okay, I need a carriage return there. I need a carriage return here. No, God! Okay, this needs a carriage return here. I mean, what a nightmare. It's not going to end up looking very good, and it's going to take you so much time. Please, please do not do this. So this template here is incredibly misleading because this is not actually on the fly wrapping around this. Someone manually took a lot of time to set something up where it looks like there's this text wrap, but we do not have this text wrap feature here in Canva. This is something you can do super easily in Affinity Layout Studio. I'm going to show you that, but first let me show you a couple other traps. Here is another Canva template I've opened, and it sort of makes it look like this is text on a path bending around this gentleman here. Now it doesn't do a perfect job, but it kind of looks like that's what's going on. But then if you actually look at it, these are different text chunks, and each of these have the curve feature applied to it. So they're bending the text with the curve, and then they're sort of making it look like it lines up here. But again, you're not going to get this to match perfectly without spending a lot of time in dividing it into different text chunks, because let's say you have your own custom saying, here is what I want it to actually say. Okay, so I have this here. Oh, but I'm going to have to bend it around. So I'm going to have to come in here and change the curve on this. So let's go under Effects and curve it a little less. So it's sort of curving here, but oh, I can't use all this with one curve. So let me cut that out and place some of it up here. I think I copied the wrong portion, but I'd have to come in here and then adjust, and this is going to be a mess. Do not do this. You cannot do text on a path inside of Canva. That is something you can easily do in a program like Affinity. Trying to do it here, it's going to be a mess. You're going to have to use this curve. You're going to have to break it into chunks. You're going to waste so much time. Please don't do this. This is another trap. Okay, another trap. Here again, I have a couple pages from a multi-page template here. And this is an article here, how to choose your perfect gown. And it's got one page and then it's got a second page. Well, I'm not saying you can't do something like this in Canva. It might work out if you have your article perfectly finalized and you're never going to make any changes. But what if I come back here later and I'm like, you know what, I'm making an edits and I actually have another sentence here. So here is an extra sentence where I talk about some more stuff. And so I want to make this edit, and then, okay, suddenly now this extra line here it's not going to look right on this page, so I'm going to have to copy this text here. So Control X, and then that actually should go on this page, but so it's going to have to come right here and be in this text block, Control V, and then space, and then then this has to be moved down. I'm going to have to copy this and paste it there. Whoa. This again is going to be a huge time sink. If you have multi-page documents and you ever want to make edits, you don't have smart text flow between different text boxes. You can do that very easily again in Affinity, and I'm going to show you again why this sort of thing is a time sink. And if you have more advanced page layouts like this, you can save yourself time and huge headaches by using something like Affinity's Layout Studio. Okay, so I've demonstrated a couple of these time traps and the reasons why Canva isn't great for advanced page layout design. So let's go over to Affinity Studio now, and let's see how all these problems are going to be solved. So here we are in Affinity, and again, Affinity now is totally free except for some of these Canva AI tools here, which you need a pro subscription for. But everything we do today under this Layout Studio, which we're going to go to in a minute, totally free. Okay, so I have an image of that layout we just saw over in Canva. Now this is just a JPEG flat copy of this. None of this is editable text. I just brought it in here so we have a reference for how do we create this design in Affinity, and how will we overcome the problem we were having in Canva where it's just a mess to have this text try to wrap around this image. So let's switch over now, because right now I'm under the Pixel Studio. Let's switch over to the Layout Studio. So again, when you switch, you can easily get back from one studio to the next, but things are going to change. Things are going to look a little different. So now that we're over here in the Layout Studio, we have a Master Pages section over here. We have a Pages section over here. We have some different tools over here, different look of things over here. So let's just go over the basics here, and then very quickly you're going to start to see how Affinity is just a better option when it comes to creating advanced layouts, multi-page layouts. There's just more tools here in Affinity that are really going to save us time. Now here in the Layout Studio, we have a different configuration of tools here over in the left panel, and some of these are going to be familiar to you if you've worked under the Pixel Studio or the Vector Studio, but some of these are going to be different. Now I'm not going to cover every single tool here, but I'm going to cover the ones most important. I think the best way to go through it is just trying to recreate this design here. So I'm going to start just by taking this design here and lowering the opacity way down, because I'm going to sort of use it as a guide for my layout. But again, we're going to recreate this on our own. Okay, so first let's add a placeholder for our image. So over here in the left menu, we have a picture frame rectangle tool and then an ellipse tool. So with either one of these, we can just drag out a placeholder. So this would be a rectangular image here. If I wanted an elliptical or a circle one, I could use this elliptical one. And if I drag it out, and if I hold down Shift when I'm dragging it out, then it constrains proportions, so I could make that an exact circle. Now this is Affinity, and if you've seen any of my other videos here, you know you could create any shape here, create a clipping mask. So we have other options, but in the Layout Studio, we have this rectangular picture frame, and then we also have this elliptical one. So let me just come on here and grab my select tool, because I'm going to get rid of this rectangular one because we don't need that. But then let's grab this elliptical one here, and I'm going to drag it down, and we're going to let it break proportions, because I'm just basically going to come in here and I'm going to sort of reposition it here and try to get something that basically matches where that picture is in the current one. So again, drag it out, reposition, drag it out. Now, one thing that doesn't work here is when you're dragging this out, you cannot hold down the space bar. That's a keyboard shortcut where sometimes you can reposition something on the fly. So it's a little trickier here because I have to manually push it around. I didn't get that perfect, but let's call that good enough for our purposes. So now I have this placeholder here, and we'll see over here it says picture frame. So we do have a picture frame placeholder as one of our layers now in a document. And when I have that selected here with the select tool, we can see up here I have this replace image option. So I can hit replace image, and I can come in here and I can find an image. So let me go under people here. I don't have the exact photo we saw before, but let's say I wanted this picture here. Okay, I'm just going to open that, and it's going to get placed here in the frame. Now, anytime you have a frame selected like this, you have some handy controls. Obviously, I could still resize the frame itself with these corner points. I could rotate the frame itself with that. Let me hit Control Z to undo that. But then if I'm over the frame itself, we have even more controls here. So if I wanted to rotate the image within the frame, I have this little slider here, so I could pull and rotate that way. We also see this indicator here. I could click on that and I could sort of reposition any direction. Also, just use my arrow keys. I could tap my arrow keys and it would nudge 1 pixel at a time, the image within the frame. Or if I scroll down here a little bit, just so I can see to the bottom of this frame, since it extends beyond our page here, I have to go down and see. But but then I see right here I have this little slider here, which again just lets you zoom in and out. Now it's sort of off center because I did sort of slide it around, so that's acting a little weird, but you slide in and out like this. There we go, zooming in and out, repositioning it within the frame. Now a little trick, if I wanted to recenter this page here, I could double click on this element. Anytime you double click on an element, it sort of centers that element on your screen. So if I double clicked on this, it would center on the frame, but since this other element takes up the whole page, double click on that and I've sort of recentered my page. Okay, let's start to add our text now. Actually, before I do that, let's go over the document setup real quick, because I just started with an open document here, but a lot of times you're going to create a document, and so you're going to be thinking about what you want your margins to be, maybe a print bleed, if there's going to be a print bleed that you need to have, depending on printer settings. And there are lots of visual guides you can put in here to help yourself, and you're going to find a lot of those under document setup. So let's go in here under document setup. Now we're going to see a whole document and selected spread. So for now, let's just work on the whole document. This is in millimeters. I think I want to change it over to inches, but whatever units make sense for you. So I'm going to change that to inches. Let's come down here, and margins and bleeds aren't turned on. So bleed, I'm just going to turn that on and show you that you can have a print bleed area. So this is the area when you print something to a printer that's going to be trimmed off. So usually they print something slightly bigger than it's going to be needed for the actual size, and then they trim off that edge. That's why sometimes you have to watch that print bleed area and make sure you don't have important elements that you want, like text, spilling into that print bleed area. So I'm going to put in something like 0.125. And since this is all linked here, it's going to get these for the right, left, top, bottom. All those are going to get that. And then let's go ahead and add a margin as well. And again, this print bleed, this is pretty common, I think, 1/8 of an inch. You're printing to a specific service, they're going to have that information for you. You can ask them, you can find out what you need for your particular document. Now I'm going to go in here and set a margin. Let's just set a 1-inch margin. Again, this is all linked together here, so that's going to apply to everything. Go ahead and click OK. And now we have this sort of outer margin here, and then we have our 1-inch margin here. So I might come in here now and just sort of grab this container here with my image and just get it so it really does match up exactly to that 1-inch margin on the edges there, because I'm using this as a guide. Again, it doesn't match perfectly with the prior document, but that's okay. You can fool around and get it to match if you want to, but I'm just doing this for an example purposes. But now we have these guides, we have this bleed area we can see, so we can be careful about what does and doesn't go into that bleed area, and we have our margins here. And you can add other guides as well. So if you come up here under View, and you go down under guides here, this also can be very helpful. Let me just move it to the side so we can see here. So I can come in here, right now there's a gutter of 0 inches, but if I do, let's do something like, let's add a second column. So I'm gonna put a second column in here. And right now it's in outline mode. Let's go to filled mode. I am seeing a gutter here, but it shows as 0, I think because we switched from millimeters to inches, and it's looking for a value here. But if we put in, if we actually put in 0 and hit enter, I think we'll see that gutter go away. So the gutter is just the space in between your rows and columns. So let's put something like 0.5 in there. If we wanted it to be ½ inch, we could do something like that. If you wanted to do 0.25, and I think what it's doing here is it's just rounding. So it's kind of just rounding here. Let's put the 0, the leading 0, 0.25. So you can get it in here. It's just going to round this number, but you can type in those fractional values. So rows, columns, you can put in stuff like this. Right now I have it filled. You can have it in outline mode, whatever. This is not something that's going to be on your final design. It's just sort of giving you sort of a visual guide here, a cue that can help you when setting up your design. And you notice when doing rows and columns here, it is making use of our margins. So it's protecting those margins. It's just putting the guides within those margins. So go ahead and do something like that, close it out. Now we have these guides if we wanted to use them. Now this isn't going to be something that's in your final design. If you go in and out of preview mode up here, you can see they're not actually there. It's just giving you a visual cue as you lay out your design so you can use some of these underlying structure rules to help really set up a nice layout. So let's go ahead and add our text now. So in here there are 2 different text tools. We have the artistic text tool, which you'll find right here, and this is good when you're just doing headlines, simple short text. But when you actually have a full paragraph text, then you want to come up here and you want to use this frame text tool, and this has a really cool text flow feature where you even can have text that spills from one text frame to another one, and you can tell it, you know, when this text box overflows, I want it to go to this next text box. So that is a really cool feature that's going to help solve a problem we couldn't solve in Canva. But for our headline here, let's just use this artistic text tool. And so I'm going to click on that. And then with this tool, as you click and drag out, you can sort of click and hold your left mouse button and drag out until you have the size of the letter you want. You could always adjust this later, but I'm going to set it like that, and I'm going to type out fashionable young lady, and we see how it's spilling off the other way because it's currently set here to left to center line, but we can change this to align left. And then of course we can always come in here and grab this move tool and we can move this around. So I'm going to stick it precisely so it lines up with that left edge. I'm going to size it down so its size is up here with our underlying structure. I'll move it down, and of course if I wanted to change the font, I could come in here and say I don't want this Berlin Sans. I could come down, just scroll over all these different fonts. It's going to show you these different fonts. It's got previews over here on the left, so you can really quickly just use these previews, find ones that work, and then of course that may mean you need to resize again, so we could size it down to like that, so whatever you want. Size it, position it, all those things. Okay, so we have a title there, and then at any point in time, if like I don't like that I filled this underlying guide with gray, I could come back in here and say, you know what, let's go under guides here. Let's just change that to outline. It's going to make it a little easier to see. We'll close that up. We still have our guides. We've just changed the way they're appearing there. Now, I'm going to go ahead and take this back layer and lower down the transparency even farther. I can still see it there, but I see with this, basically we have a text box up here. There's going to be then a text box here and a text box here, and then a text box here and here, and that's where we're going to come in here and we're going to use this text frame tool. So again, this one here, text frame tool, and with this you actually drag out the text box itself. So I know I'm going to have one that spans entirely across the design up here, and then anytime you do this and you're within a text box like this, you can right click and you can insert filler text. So this is sort of just dummy placeholder text you can stick in your design. So we'll put one there, and then I'm going to create another text box here. Again, I'll come in here, insert filler text, and I'm going to use the Alt key on my keyboard and actually come up and grab my select tool first, then the Alt key, hold down Shift, just drag out a copy here, get it to snap over here, so I have the other text box, and then same thing here. I'm going to click on this one. I'm just going to use Alt and drag this down, position it again, snapping it so it lines up, and this one here I'm actually going to expand all the way out across the design. Okay, so let's look and see what we have. At this point here, for a second, I'm just going to come and turn off this guide layer at the back. Let's go into preview mode for a second here, just so we can really see everything without the guides, with nothing selected. So we have our title here. We have a text box up here. Then it breaks into two columns here. So a column here, a column here. Then we have another text box here, but we do not have it yet flowing around this design down here. Well, this is actually quite easy. You can select any element here within your design, and then you can come up here and you can go under text and you can come down under this text menu and you can find this text wrap option. And so now we can do show wrap settings, and then in here we can choose how this element is going to interact with text in the design. So if I come over here and I choose this tight option, now suddenly we'll see this text is sort of coming around here, and I can control what kind of distance we have in between. So in other words, if I wanted a 1-inch margin around this, I could type 1 inch, and that would just be the left side. But if I want to join all this together, I can make sure everything is linked up. Now let me type in the 1 inch. That's going to be way too big, so maybe we want something like 0.25, and now suddenly we have text that's going to flow around your design here. And we can see how this works by clicking on this itself. I'm going to grab the move tool up here. If I move this around, we see how the text now dynamically on the fly is going to adjust to this image. So this is totally different from what we saw in Canva, where they really were just cheating and doing something that would be incredibly tedious, putting in carriage breaks. This is something now where it's actually working in a smart way, and it's working on the fly, so we actually can have text like this that sort of conforms around an element in your design. Now I've added the text wrap option to this picture frame down here, but just to show you, you can do it with other things. I'm going to select our title here, and if I did the same thing here where I went text wrap to see the options for this, I could do the same thing where I set up the same sort of wrapping for this title here, and now suddenly as I move my title around, you see that space is adjusted as I move it down into the text. So you can do this for lots of different things. You're not limited to just doing it with images like this. So again, just a super helpful feature that can let you set up some really dynamic layouts. Let's go on to another feature that's going to demonstrate even more why the advanced tools you have in Affinity are going to be crucial when you start taking on more advanced page layout projects. So we looked at this example before, and we can imagine when you're writing an article like this, if you wanted to come back after the fact and add some text here, then suddenly that's going to shift some of the other text. So if you put text right here, suddenly you're going to have to readjust all of these columns and all of these columns just because you put text in one spot, because there is no text flow in Canva that lets you sort of link up different text boxes and have text flow from one text box to another. And we're just talking about one article here. Imagine if you're laying out like a whole magazine. So if you're someone in charge of laying out a whole magazine, there's no way you're going to have it totally set and you're going to be able to come in here and individually set things and never go back and take changes and make changes. That's absolutely ridiculous. So we need more advanced tools. So let's jump over to Affinity now and see how Affinity handles text flow and see why it's such a better tool for advanced print layouts. So here we are on Affinity home screen, and let's imagine we were going to create a whole magazine layout like this. Now, you learned about this home screen if you watched my prior video in this learning series. I can link that up above if you haven't seen it yet. But so I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. So I'll click this green plus icon up here. So you have all these different presets you can choose from here. Obviously, you can type in custom settings over here. You can start to store your favorites, but I'm going to go ahead and search here for magazine. So I'm going to type in magazine up here and see what they have. And so I'm going to choose this oversized magazine. Now this is a 9x12 page, but this is a magazine. I'm going to want facing pages. In other words, there's going to be a left page and a right page. So I'm going to have to control that in my settings. So I'm going to choose this one here, and that's going to bring up these properties over here, but I can still come over here and make adjustments. And I'm going to change this to multi-page over here. So whenever you set up multi-pages here, you're now having facing pages. You could have it be something like this, where you turn that off, and suddenly you're going to have multiple pages, but you're just going to have individual single pages. We want facing pages, so we have that left and right page, but then also you may have a cover page, so you may not want that to start immediately on the first page. And so we see here we have facing pages, we have start page on right. That lets me know that I'm not going to have a left page on that first page because that's going to be the cover page. So we're going to set that to right. We have these settings. This all looks good. I can adjust margins later if I need to. So I'm just going to leave everything like it is. I'm going to go ahead and create this document. It's going to go ahead and open this up on screen. So we see that we just have the single page here because remember, we said start it with a right page. So if we look at this here, we can see that this initial page just has a right page. That's going to be our cover page, but I can come in here and just use this plus icon to add more pages. So if I hit plus now, it says how many pages do I want to insert here? We're going to insert 2 pages after page 1. All this stuff, we're going to go ahead and click OK. And if we see now we have pages 2 and 3 here, and that has a left page and a right page. Now down here, it's going to show you in the bottom left corner what page you're viewing. That's kind of important because sometimes it's not obvious. So we're going to go ahead and click and we see that now we're on page 1 of 3. Click down on this one. Now we're on page 2 and 3 of 3, seeing here. And you can also just sort of scroll up and down with your mouse wheel like this. But anytime you want to jump to a page, you can just click on that, double click on that particular page, and you're going to jump to that page centered in your view here. So I went ahead and started to create a wedding magazine layout using that article we saw in Canva sort of as my inspiration. And I started it the same way I did this, but I'm going to go ahead and jump over to that project now. And so I'll click up here, and then I'll talk about what I have here for my layout. So first we have, if I click on this, we have our cover page. So I just brought in an image here, brought in a title, did some basic things like that. And then we can see we do have a bleed area here. And so actually I need to fix this here. If you see right now, the right edge of my image frame does not go into that bleed area, and I want that to extend into the bleed area. Print bleeds exist because printers can't print to the very edge of a piece of paper when they're printing, and so you need to print larger. So printers print larger, and then they're going to trim off an area later. So if you want your images to go crisp, clean all the way to the edge of that printed space, you have to extend images into the bleed area. Now you wouldn't want something like your title going to the bleed area because then now my L is in that bleed area. That's going to be the trim area, so we don't want to lose that. So you want all your text safely within that bleed area. But things that you do want to get trimmed and go all the way to the edge, maybe solid colors, maybe images like this, you want those to extend into the bleed area. So just keep that in mind. If we look at the other pages here, so let me go to page 1 and 2. I've laid these out just using all the things we learned about with that first example. So wherever we have solid colors here, these are just image placeholders, so image frames. So I came over here and I found this picture frame tool, and I just dragged out some rectangular picture frames, and I just gave them a solid color background. We can still put images in there. I just gave them a solid color so they would stand out here. And then for the other ones here, I put in some of these text elements here that are just one line, our title, and then by the author here. I just used the artistic type tool for that, but then everywhere else where I have text, I made sure I use this text frame option because that's going to be very important. This frame text tool, you want to use this whenever you have paragraph text, whenever you maybe are going to have multiple text boxes and you might need text to flow from one text box to another. That's going to be very important, and that's going to be something we talk about in a minute. Now, these images are images that I want to extend to the edge of the page. So because I want them to extend to the edge of the page, I want to make sure that they extend into the trim area. Now, if there's an important part of the image that I definitely want to show, I would not want that to be in the trim area, but I do want some areas that I'm okay with being trimmed going to the edge of the page. And that's why these extend up into the bleed area. Same with these here. Now, whenever you have solid color like that, this blue, sort of blue-green that makes up the background, and if I'm getting that wrong, I am slightly colorblind, so this looks like a blue-green to me. But whenever you will have a solid color like this, if that was the paper you were printing on, so if you were printing on white paper and you had a white background, it wouldn't matter so much. But if you ever want to make sure that that solid color extends to the paper and you don't sort of have a white edge or a different colored edge, you would want that to extend to the bleed area as well. So I'm just going to grab all this. I'll hold down the shift key, I believe. If I do that, it's all going to expand out. Then all the edges are moving. I didn't get this one for some reason, but anyways, I want to make sure all of these edges extend into that bleed area. And everything else we see here, I mean, again, these are all just the components we talked about in that first example. But now we can see with these text box here at the bottom here, I actually have some blank space where I'm not efficiently using this space. I just copied the text over from Canva, but I actually would probably have more lines here. And then this one here, there's extra space at the bottom. So how do we get rid of this extra space? And then how are we going to handle the fact if we come in here and make edits that might change what appears in this text box, that may change what appears in here? I don't want to have to go back and edit all of these individually anytime I make one little change or I increase the size of my font. And that's why text flow is going to be so crucial, and you actually can handle it very easily here in Affinity when you use this text frame tool, and I'm going to show you how to do that now. So if I have my selection tool here and I have any of these text frames selected, you notice how you see this little white triangle at the bottom, and that's because this text box is not connected up with any of these other text boxes. If I click over here, again, we'll see that white triangle, and the same for these as well. Well, you can use that very easily to set up text flow. If I want text from this text box to be naturally joined with this next text box, what I'm going to do is start on this first one. Then I'm going to click on this triangle. And we notice when we do, suddenly the whole thing is highlighted for a second. And then I'm just going to click on the next one where I want that to be linked with. And you'll notice when I hover over any of these other ones, it shows this link icon. So you see how I have the black cursor and the link icon. Well, I'm just going to click. And when I do, suddenly we see this link line appear. And we also saw how the text shifted, and now we have more text within here. Now, if I wanted to undo that link, if I clicked on this blue input link and then clicked on the same frame itself, then it's going to tell it, okay, there isn't an input link. And so suddenly that link disappears. We no longer see the link line. Now we also lost the text, and we still have some extra text in here because what happened was when we established that link, then in essence, all the text went over to this frame here. And we actually see this eyeball icon here, which indicates there's more text than is being shown here because now we have the text that used to be in this text box is over here. So that's something to be aware of when you establish link and then you delete a link. Suddenly when we made that link, it's like all the text got ported over here, and so it didn't really exist anymore in here. So when we deleted the link, this is empty. But that's where you can always use that Control-Z keyboard shortcut just to step back through. And I'm going to step all the way back through using Control-Z until we actually remove that link that we set up. So something to keep in mind when you're establishing links like this. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to link these up. And so when you click on any box here, we have an input link. This is where text is flowing from. This is where it's flowing to. So again, I'll click on this one. I'll establish a link with this one. I'll click on this one. I'll establish a link with this one. I'll click on this one, and I'll establish a link with this one. So this was pretty easy to do because we're working on facing pages here. But even if we decided to make this article longer, and so it was going to spill to another page, this would still be easy to set up. So let's just illustrate that by coming down here. I'm going to add another set of pages. Go ahead and click OK. I'm going to come back up here, just grab my background rectangle, which is controlling the color here behind the page. I'll paste that down here. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in another text box on this page. So I'm going to grab this frame text tool once again, come up within my margins here, and just drag out another text box on this page. So now we have this text box. We see the white triangle not connected to anything yet. However, if I double click back to this page just to center that page, then I could come up here, again, use my select tool, click on this one, click on this arrow to control text flow, boom, now we have it turned blue. Then I'm going to double click down on this page and then come in here, boom, set that up, and now I have a text link established going from this page down to this page. So even though we're working with different pages and they're not facing pages, still very easy to do. Now, of course, there is no overflow now, so we're not seeing anything on this page. But if I were to click back on this text box and change the font size, so suddenly things start to take up more space, we're going to see how this text flow works. Now, because all the text is technically in this one frame flowing to all the other ones, if I change the text size here, it's going to affect all of these frames. So let me come in here and let's scale even larger. We can see it get bumped down. Now suddenly when I go to 16 point, it's going to go beyond this page, and if I scroll down, we can see yes, it is flowing to my next set of pages. So text flow, super useful feature. You can see why this saves you a ton of time, how you would not want to do this in a program like Canva, and why this is such a crucial tool when it comes to advanced layout design. Now let's hold up 1 second, because I did get something wrong. Even though I teach this stuff, I still make mistakes. I still get things wrong. So if you get things wrong, don't worry, that's just going to happen. But what I learned just here is apparently just controlling the text size here was not enough. We see we do have inconsistent text sizes here. So I don't know whether it recognizes this as original text from this text box, but some of this other text is still being treated separately. Text flow is working, but my sizes are mixed up. So on this page here, I could just select the text boxes in question, boom. We want to set all these to the same size. So let's come over here. Let's just say we were doing 16 point. So now they're all 16 point. I could come down on this next page, and again, we saw some of it was adjusted, but not quite all of it. So if you ever have the inconsistent sizes like this, just find the text boxes in question, come in here and make the adjustments. Now for some reason here, this one's still getting broken. So let's come in here, and there we go. Now if I change it, now we can get it all back, okay? So we see how the text flow is working now. Now we have those consistent text sizes. So just something to be aware of. And of course, this text flow, super helpful. Let's just look at one more thing here with this example before we move on to some other awesome stuff. So we saw before, if you have a select tool selected and you select any of these image frames, you could use this replace image option to put a image in that frame. But let's just say I wanted to replace all 4 of these photos at once and save a little time. Well, there is another tool over here called the place tool. So if I come down here and find this little icon here, that's the place tool. And if I click on that, it's going to let me navigate to a directory on my computer. So of course, normally for a wedding article, I'd be using wedding images, but let's just pretend these are wedding images. So maybe I wanted this one, I wanted that one, I want this one, I want this one. So I could select the ones I want and go ahead and open them, and they're going to bring them in here. And then very easily I have these, and I can click, try that again. I could click on an image and then click on the frame where I want it to go. Click on an image, click on the frame where I want it to go. Click on an image, click on the frame, and so very easily I could place all my images that way. So just another tool that can save you a little time. That's the place tool over here. It basically lets you open a group of images at one time. Then you can place them in here without having to go do one, go put it in, go find another one. If they're all coming from the same place, that place tool is pretty handy. In one of those early examples we looked at, we also saw that in Canva, you cannot create type on a path. Well, you can do that here in Affinity. So I'm just going to grab my pen tool. And if you're not familiar with the pen tool, I do have a pen tool tutorial in this learning series. So I'll link that up above, and you can check that out if you need a refresher. But I'm just going to put down a point here. I'll put down a point here. I'll put down another point here. Switch over to my node tool, which is how I like to work when I'm using this pen tool here. And then come over, and we'll just make this be one sort of long swooshing curve here. So let me line up that just so I snap this point here. So something like this, move it around however I want. But now that I have that, I can come up here and grab this artistic text tool. I can come in here and place something right here on the path. And so maybe this article is called turning images into vector artwork, something like this. Type out whatever. I'll come in here. Let's make this capital letters. So let's go all capitals, uppercase, and we'll make this even bigger. It's not registering for some reason. Sometimes you have to click off of it, click back on it. So here we go, uppercase. Here we go. Let's set this to bigger. And then now we can see that this type right here, I can move along this path. So this is type on a path, very easy to do here inside of Affinity, something you cannot do in Canva. So again, come in here and let's make it something like this. And then when you have type on a path here, you'll sort of notice you have these arrows where you can move it back and forth. And then if you were to bring this one down here, then suddenly you would flip your artwork and your text, on this path if you brought that down. And now you can put it on the other side. Want to bring it back, come up here again, take this slider, bring this up, and I'm flipping it back to the other side. So it takes a little practice just getting used to these sliders and how it works here, but really pretty simple, and you can create some pretty cool effects now that you really can put type directly on a path. Now, let's imagine this article is just part of a larger magazine that's going to have lots and lots of pages. And what if I wanted to come in here and add page numbers? Well, if you're coming over from Canva, Canva did finally get an auto page numbering feature a year or so back, maybe a year and a half, can't remember exactly, but it's not great. You have much more control in here. And to talk about page numbers, we're actually going to talk about an even more advanced and more useful feature, which is called master pages. Now, if you look over to the left here, we can see we have our pages here. So I have a cover page here where there's nothing on it currently, but then I have this page. Maybe this is an article, but we could add some more pages in here. So let me just go ahead and add a few more. Now they're just coming in here as blank, but we're adding these pages. Now, if I twirl down above it, we see we also have a section called Master Pages. And I do have one in here called Master A. We haven't talked about that yet, but we're going to talk about this now. And this is going to be super, super important. Now, if I click over here on this page right here, pages 2 and 3, this spread here, so let me just get this centered, we'll see that this actually does have something called Master A, and that's because I applied this Master A template to this page. And if I turn that off, we see all it's doing right now is controlling the background color of the page. Now, this is a super important feature, and it can be super useful, but there also is a quirk that's part of it now, which I sort of consider a bug, which I hope Affinity comes in here and fixes, but at least at the time of this recording, it's still something that's present. So I'm going to show you those useful features, but then I'm going to show you this one quirk, this one bug that you need to understand and work around, because this can be super useful, but because of that one thing I'm talking about, it could be a bit of a headache if you don't understand how this works. Now, if I want to navigate to a page over here, I can sort of double click on that page and it's going to navigate to that page. I can even double click on the center of a spread and it's going to sort of center both of those facing pages. Now, something else, if I just click on a page, I'm not navigating to it, but now that it has this blue rectangle around it, we do have that as a selected page. I could control click to select a second page and a third page, or I could click on one and then shift click somewhere else and it's going to select all the pages in between as well. Or if I click off everything, you can also just drag into a selection box and select a bunch of pages that way. Just wanted to show you how you can select a bunch of pages, because then with these pages selected, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do clear masters. This is because I did apply this master A, but I'm going to go in here and clear masters. And when we do that, we see that all these pages become white, because again, if we double click up here on the master page, all that I have in here is this orange rectangle. So again, with this here, if I were to right click on this master page and say apply master to pages, and I can tell it which pages I want to apply to, I can specify some pages here. I could do odd pages only. I could do all pages. Let's do all pages. We'll go ahead and click OK, and then we'll give it a second. And we'll see that that gets applied to all of these pages. Okay, double click on, now this is orange again. So with master pages, you sort of can create almost like templates, almost like content blocks, and you can get it to do some really cool stuff. It even has some intelligence built in, which I'm going to show you as we go through the examples here. But let's start with something simple. So let's imagine that we wanted page numbers. So I'm going to come back here to this Master A pages, Master A page, and I'm going to say I want pages sort of centered somewhere down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a text frame box here. So come up here, make sure I'm on this text frame tool. I'm just going to come out here and I'm going to drag something down here. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come under this text option. I'm going to come down here to insert. I'm going to go under fields and I'm going to choose page number. So right here, page number. And so we see it just puts a number symbol in here. Now, if I were to come in here, I could center that. So we could center align that. So let me just click back on it here to make sure it's going to take my changes. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to center align this. I can also come in here. I can make it bigger. So let's make it 18 point. We could change the font, we could bold it, we could do whatever we want. So for now, let's just make it bold. Let's center it there. Let's change the color. So we'll come in here and change this font color to white as well. Let's grab this slider, pull that down. So now we just have that as white. Now remember, this master A is applied to all of these pages. I applied it to every single page. So now that I've made changes to this master, if I click over here on page 1, we don't see anything. But if I click on page 2, there it is. Page 4, there it is. Page 6, there it is. So it is currently just getting applied to those odd pages. And to understand why that is, we just have to look at our document setup and then remember that this master is actually a 2-page spread. Now when we set up our document here, we did facing pages, but we had it start with a right-hand page. So because of it, this right-hand page is page 1, and then all of our even pages, page 2, 4, 6, they end up being the leftmost page here, the left page of the spread. And if we look at this master section up here, so if I come back here and double click on my master, so this master A, we've only set up this page number on this leftmost page. So if I were to come in here now, and let me just reposition this, let's get it nice and centered right here. But then if I were to hold down my Alt key, that's on Windows, that'd be Option on a Mac, I can drag out a copy of this. I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to get that centered here on the other page. So let me just release and actually see if I can get this to get centered. There we go. So centered in both spots. Now suddenly I have it on the left page and on the right page. And so now if I click through these here, I will see that if I click on this page 1, yes, now there's a page number. I click on the next spread. Yes, they both have a page number. So you just have to keep in mind and remember that you're working with a 2-page spread here when it comes to master pages. Now, if I look at the 2 here and the 3, I see something a little weird's going on. This 2 is sort of being pushed down. If I go to my next page in the spread here, don't seem to have that problem on this page. Well, if I come back to this page, remember this one here is set up so the text wrap is flowing around this image, so that's actually what is affecting this 2 here. You'll notice if I bump the runner up a little bit, then this fixes that positioning problem. So you have to keep in mind, when master pages are applied, look what happens. They just become the bottommost layer here in your design. And this is actually something that's super important and that we're going to talk about more. But when you get these elements on your new page, they get brought in as a group here at the bottom of your design, but they still interact with page elements. So if I bring this one down, it's still going to interact because of that text wrap that's being applied to the runner itself. So they're not just static elements that don't get affected by other page elements. They still can be affected by other page elements. And the stacking order is still going to be super important. And that's something we're going to discuss farther. But let's go farther now and see how we can make use of these master pages in very useful ways. So first of all, you could have more than one master page or set of master pages up here. And this is why I say you can sort of use these as content blocks. So I could come up here and I could use this plus icon to add another master. And by default, it's going to use whatever settings you use for your document setup. But if you wanted pages of different sizes or whatever, you could do that. You could add that here. But I'm just going to leave this as is and click OK. So it's just going to bring in a blank page like this. Now this is showing with a white background, but that's just because under document setup here, if I go down to my transparent background, I have that turned off. So if I were to turn this off on here, we'd see that that actually is transparent. If under document setup, you have this box turned off here. So let me come down and find it again. Transparent background right here, turn it off. Boom, then it's automatically going to apply that white background. So that's just something to be aware of because I can right click now and you can right click on a master and then use this apply master and choose what pages you want to apply to. Or I could come down to one of these spreads. So let's go down to page 6, 7, 6, 7. And then I could come in here and just right click. And then I can also use this apply master here. And then when I'm doing that here, I can choose which master. So we have 2 sets now. So let's choose master B. And then it's just being applied to page 7 because I think maybe I clicked on 7 itself, but let's make that correction here. So you could put a range in here. I clicked on just page 7, but if I had clicked on both of those in between, it would have been 6, 7. But so here we go, we have 6, 7. And then you can also replace the existing master. So if I wanted to get rid of A and just apply B, I could do that. But if I take this off, it's just going to apply master B above this. So if I click OK, we'll see there it is. Master B was applied above this for both pages 6 and 7 here. And notice it is above this in the stacking order. That is important. We're going to come back to that. And also notice it didn't actually add anything because like we talked about here, there's not actually any white on this page. It's just by default showing that as the background color. That's why a lot of times I will start with that transparent background turned on just to avoid confusion, but I didn't think to check that when I started this project. But I could come in here now and grab a rectangle tool. So let's come down here and let's say we wanted maybe some pages that had sort of a white border. So I'm going to drag this out along this side. We're going to come here and make sure that this is a white rectangle. So we'll make it white. It's got a stroke now. I don't want it to have a stroke. Stroke is actually set to 0 there, so we're not actually to see anything. But so we have that white border now, and now if I come down here, we see yes, that leftmost page does have that white border. So you can start to stack different things together because you can come in here and say, okay, if I wanted all my leftmost pages, my even pages to have that white border, I could go apply master to pages. We could select only even pages, go ahead and click OK, and we're going to see it gets applied here. Now, I accidentally, what did I do? It's Control Z to undo that. Control Z, because what I accidentally did when I went apply masters to page, I did replace existing. I actually want it to be over top and not just replacing it. I want it to be in concert with the other one we applied. So go ahead and do that here. Even pages, go ahead and click OK. And then when we do that, see now we get these white borders on these pages. So if I click through, we see now we have the white border. So you can start to see how you can start to use these as content blocks for sort of whatever you want, and that can be super useful. And there even is another way where these are actually pretty smart if you think about how you name your layers and how you name your layers in your master as well. So we're going to talk about that in just a few moments, but perhaps you're already seeing the fact that the master gets applied to the bottom of your layer stack. This could potentially lead to problems as well. Let me show you what I mean. So here is that document we were working on before. Now when I created this document, if I look at any of these pages here, instead of using a master to apply the background page color, I actually put a rectangle here. So this is a bluish page color that is being controlled by this layer here. Can you see why that's a problem? If I now, after the fact, decided I wanted to come in and sort of maybe add a page number to all of these layers. So if I bring in a master here, so let me click on this master A. All this master A is, it's got a background sort of a rectangle shape, and above that, I used the text option. I went in and insert, and I chose fields, and I chose a page number field. So we have an auto page number field here. So now if I were to select this master here, come down and apply master to pages, we're going to apply to all pages, replace existing, sure, go ahead and click OK. Now the problem is I can click on any of these pages and it's applied at the bottom of the layer stack. So I'm not actually seeing that. So I could grab this master and I could bump it up here to the top and now we see it. But if I had hundreds of pages here, that's going to be a pain in the butt if I have to come into each page and drag it to the top of the layer stack. So in my opinion, this is sort of a bug in the existing Affinity, and I hope they fix this by the time you're watching it. You can check this, because all they would need to do is when you come in here and choose Apply Master to Pages, they really need to have a little checkbox that lets you decide whether you want it to be at the bottom or the top of the layer stack. But since they don't have that now, and by default, it goes to the bottom, now it will appear above other master pages you've applied, but they're going to get applied by default at the bottom. So you are going to have this issue of maybe having to reorder things if you don't carefully think about this. So right now, this is something that you have to keep in mind. Order of operations is going to matter. You sort of have to have a thoughtful approach. Hopefully they're going to change it in the future, so you just have a little checks box that say you want to put something at the top of the layer stack, because that certainly would be helpful. I just want you to know that this exists, because you can save yourself some headaches if you think about this potential problem. Now let's talk about that order of operations in layer stacking by looking at just one more example so we can drive that home. And then we're going to look at some even more advanced functionality you can get with this master pages system. So I just have a basic page here on screen. We can see we have some images, we have some text, we have a headline here. Now this white background is actually not there. I just don't have transparency ticked on here, so it's showing that by default. But you'll notice in here, I don't actually have a white rectangle or anything in here. So that's just showing through because I don't have transparency checked. Now, up here on my master pages, if I click on these, this is just one I could use to add an orange background color to a page. This one could be used to add a page number, so I inserted a page number field here. And then this one here is just adds this purple border around a page. So this is just to show you how you could specifically have different templates to do different things and use them to style your page, but then the stacking order is going to matter. So I'm going to double click here to show on page 1. I could add this background color just by left clicking, holding, and then dragging and releasing over here, and it's going to add that to the page. Now if I do that for another one here, it's actually just going to replace the master page. So what I want to do instead is drag this one over here, but then I'm going to come down here and I'll right click, and you can apply master pages this way too. So now I have more options here, and I can bring this to the side, and I'm going to choose to apply the page number this time, but I don't want to replace existing, so I'm going to uncheck this. Now as I come over here, we can see that background color is the very bottom of the layer stack, and then when I apply this page number, we'll see that it stacks on top. So the order I add these matters, because if I did that, and then suddenly I was going to put this border on next, so if I right click again, do apply master pages, and then chose the border here, and again, I'm not going to replace existing, go ahead and click OK. Now we'll see that the border gets applied on top of the master pages, and so I would then have to drag it down, and of course if I was doing this in bulk and I apply these to lots of pages, it's going to be a pain having to do that each time. I would have wanted to apply the border first and then the page number because of this stacking order. So again, just driving home that the order of operations matters. Now, we're using this for some basic things here, but let's show you how this can get even more advanced and perhaps the most powerful way you can use these master pages. Okay, let me show you this document now in this advanced method, and I want to show you how you can actually use master pages to build an advanced sort of page layout system where you can very easily try out different layouts, very easily apply different layouts to new pages. You're going to see what I mean as we get in here, and you're going to see that once again, order of operations is going to be very important. So I just have one page in here right now. This is just a single page. I don't have facing pages. That's fine. The same principles apply. So looking at this page in here, we can see that there is no folder, there is no master page applied. I've just created 3 images here, and we've put an image in each thing, and then I also have some text, and then I also have a headline. Now, if we look at the master pages that I have created, if we go in here, I basically have these wireframe placeholders. I don't have images in here because if I was going to create a page with 3 images, I don't necessarily know what images are going to go in there yet, so I'm just really concerned about the placeholders. So I've sort of dragged out images where I might want them on the design, same thing with the headline, and just have some dummy text here for some body text. Now, even though I'm doing this with 3 images, 1 section of paragraph text, and 1 headline, you could imagine you could think of different layouts where maybe you have 2 images and you have 1 headline, or you don't have any headlines at all. It's just like 5 images. So you could think of different potential page layouts and come up with variations. I'm just using this for my example. So don't get caught up on how many images or text blocks you need to have. That's really something you can think about and customize depending on your needs and what kind of document you're creating. But you can imagine a magazine layout where you want to have lots of layouts to choose from. So I have this one here. I have this one here where things are set up differently. I have this one here where things are set up differently. And then this one here where things are set up differently. And I even have an extra rectangle in this one here. But with each of these, I've named the images, image 1, image 2, image 3, and then my text just named text, and then my headline is named headline. Now that can be sort of important, and I'll talk about that as we go along here. But if I were to come back to my page now, and I were to drag any of these master pages onto this, so you can try out a master page by just going and holding it over, and then you're going to see what changes are going to occur. And it's hard for you to see, but if I release here, it's actually applying the whole thing over top. So you see how it's getting applied over top? Let me hit Control Z to undo that. Actually, what you can do if you have a master page applied to a page and you want to get rid of it, you can just click on the folder, sort of it lives in this sort of nested section. You can just click on it and you can just delete it. Now, same thing if I wanted to apply any of these other ones, you're seeing how it's just getting applied over top. So because I applied all of these images first, and they don't live within a master page, when I try to apply a master page, it just gets applied over top of all this existing content. But what if I did this differently? Let me create a new blank page here. So we'll go ahead and click that, create a blank page. Now we have it right here. Now what if before I chose my content like I've done on this page, what if I first just applied a layout I think I might use? So let's just drag this master page here. Let's apply it to this page. Boom, we have this. Now I could come in here and start to make changes. So let me just come in here and use my place tool. And I'm going to grab 3 images. So let's grab this image, and I'm going to make sure these are different from what I'm using already. So this one and this one, let's grab these 3. Okay. Then we'll place these. And so let's place this one here. We'll place this one up here. And we'll take this one and we'll place it here. Now I could come in here and I could change this to a custom headline. So custom headline. And then I could come in here and I could make all this text my own text. So you get the idea. Obviously you'd have something that made sense, but just putting that in there for this example. And now that I've done this, because I started with this master page, it all lives within this master page element right here. So what now if I try to apply one of these templates? This one here has the different things differently organized. So what if I just drag that over the page? Well, look at how it's keeping my content, but it's adjusting the page layout. So if I drag another one, it's keeping my content, but it's adjusting the page layout. Another one here, it's keeping my content, but it's adjusting the page layout. So because of this, it's a very smart method. If you think you want to try different layouts, you can set up these various wireframe layouts and then start with that as you create a new page, but then you can go in there and make your customizations. And then because everything lives within a master page layer like this, it will attempt to remap things as you drag out a new page layout. So it's attempting to remap. Now it's attempting to remap. Now it will do this even if the names here are different than in the master page you're applying. However, the reason why it does make sense to name these, if you do name them, it will make use of that information. So in other words, let me come here and we see how this is the largest image. So if I call this image A and then in a different layout, so let's drag this one on, this is the largest image again. If on both of those templates, this image here is named image A, then I can assure that if that's my hero image, I always want that to be the largest image, it's going to stay the largest image. If I don't have them named explicitly like that, there's a chance it remaps to one of the other frames. And so maybe the largest image is now not the largest image, and maybe that's not how you intended. So there are different layers to this in terms of how customized you want to be. And if you want to be really smart about it, then you can come in here and name your layers explicitly and have them match up with your names here in the master pages. Now we notice this one here has a rectangle. If I drag in one that doesn't have a rectangle, that rectangle disappears. Now I don't have a rectangle here on this page, but if I drag in one that does have that rectangle, it'll show up. So what's happening here is one master page layer is just being replaced with the other one. So this one here has the rectangle in it. This one here does not. So if I drag this one on here, then the rectangle is going away. If I drag this one back on here, then the rectangle is coming back. But what's cool is that all my custom content here is attempting to remap, okay? So your master pages here are controlling the layout of things, but then the content itself, the actual image, the actual text, the actual headline, that can live down in your the page itself. And that gives you a lot of flexibility because you can build out your own content on a page and then you can try out all sorts of different layouts. Now, if I were to build other layers in here and have content that lived outside of the master page layer, then I can apply all the master page layers and it's going to update all the master page stuff, but it's not going to affect anything that lives outside of that master page, okay? So master pages are incredibly powerful. They give you a ton of flexibility, but it is important to just understand a lot of the little quirks that go along with them so you know how to apply them correctly. So hopefully this helps you. And of course, if you have any questions, you can drop them down below and I will answer them if I can. Now, one more thing to mention when it comes to master pages here, if I go down into this master page layer and everything that exists within it, you'll notice I can adjust some things. Like I said, the content lives on its own. So if I want to update the text, I can. If I want to update my headline, I can. If I want to sub out a new picture, I can. But if I come in here and I try to click on the picture itself and resize it, you'll notice these little X's I see instead of the resize handles. The same thing if I click on the rectangle itself here. So let me get on the rectangle layer. Again, I can't resize this rectangle. So certain things, the layout itself, the actual size of things, those are being controlled by my master page layer. You can edit these, but you have to think about how you want to do this. So if I wanted to edit this picture and say, well, let's just say the rectangle here. Maybe I want my rectangle behind my headline to be a little bit bigger, but I only want to do that for this page. Then I could right click over here and I could choose right click on the master page layer and I could choose edit detached. So when you right click on the master page layer and you choose edit detached, now you can come in here and suddenly you can click on things and you can resize, but this is not going to affect the master page itself. So if I click on the master page itself, we see I haven't resized that rectangle on that master page. I've just detached down here and made this resize on this page. Now, when you're finished editing, sometimes it'll have a finish button there. I think because I left the page, I lost that. But let's resize one other thing again. And so this time I'll right click again on my master page layer here. Let's choose once again, edit detached. And let's say we wanted to resize this image as well. I'm going to make this image even bigger. So let's drag it down like that. And then right here is where I mentioned sometimes you'll see this finish button here. You can click finish when you're done. And now you've made that edit. And once again, if you try to do it, now it's locked again because you hit that finish button. And again, I have not affected this in any way at all. Of course, I could come on here and I could make adjustments on the master page itself. So let's say this is the one I was just working on. So let's say I came in here and I decided to make this image a lot smaller. I could go ahead and drag that down. And then when I come back to the page itself, we see that automatically on the fly, it's being governed by that master page layer. So on the fly, it has been adjusted. Now, I also could have adjusted it from on the page itself here, again, using that same right click trick, but instead of edit detached, if we chose edit linked, now we come in here, we wanted to make that bigger, so we sized that down, and then I could go ahead, click finish again. But if I go back to the master page connected to that, we can see because I chose edit linked, I was editing the layout on the master page. Okay, so just one more thing to be aware of with master pages, but perhaps the most powerful feature you have here within Affinity, the thing that potentially that could save you the most time, is this master pages feature. So make sure you understand it, make sure you know how it works, because it really allows you to make changes in bulk. It gives you layout flexibility if you want to try out different things. It's just a super, super helpful tool. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. That's always the goal with these videos. Feel free to like and subscribe if you like content like this. I also have a free newsletter that I send around occasionally. So if you want to check that out, I will post a link in the first pinned comment below. Thanks again. See you soon.
Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that. Spitting slow, spitting fast. I could roast, I could gas. Think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past.